Hello, beautiful people. Welcome back to my channel. In this channel, you would find the most relevant topics of discussions that will help you through your twin flame journey. So, a very warm welcome to all the new subscribers and to all those who have been here since the start. Today's video is going to go somewhere many people don't dare to go, because this is a topic that is, something that, it's not talked about much. So that's why, as the title speaks, why love turns into rage, sacred anger in the twin flame journey. So that's the reason why we're going to talk about divine feminine rage. And the thing is, we have all been there before at some point, hence why we can call it the sacred rage. And let me be very clear here, all right? Rage in the 3D world differs from sacred rage. So let me make sure that the distinction is very clear here. So we are going to talk about sacred rage. So I am sacred rage, which is sacred anger. And like I said, we have all been there before at some point. Hence why we can call it sacred anger. And especially in that moment in our twin flame journey, when love no longer feels soft. Pay attention to this. When love no longer feels soft, and all the sweetness, all the longing, all the compassion suddenly boils into something hot, uncomfortable, and righteous. So if you ever felt like screaming, collapsing, or walking away from the entire connection, then this video is for you. And I know a lot of people, they don't watch my video, and sometimes, without watching it, just by looking at the title, you assume I talk about this and I talk about that. So I'd rather, you watch the video and then write in your comments. Having said that, today we are going to delve really deep into this, all right? So like I said, only if you're on a twin flame journey, only if you have ever felt like screaming, collapsing, or walking away from the entire connection, this video is for you. So let's delve right into what is really happening when love turns into sacred anger, and why it's not just okay and it's sacred. So there's a moment in the divine feminine journey, which all of us divine feminines go through at some point or another, that does not fit into the typical love and light narrative, or the fairy tale narrative as we call it. It's in this moment our sweetness ends. The love bombing, the mollycoddling, all that ends. This moment, the moment our devotion starts to rot inside of us, within us. So that whole Rapunzel stuck in the tower waiting for a Prince Charming face, all that BS goes away. That moment, okay, I don't know what that was. That moment, the soft longing that once tethered you to him erupts into sacred fire, which explodes as sacred anger or rage. I know rage is a very strong word, but you know what I mean. This isn't bitterness. This isn't a trauma response. Let me be very clear. This isn't a trauma response. And this isn't you failing the test either. That's why in a monadic twin flame journey, it's a little bit more complex. So this is the right of sacred anger, a necessary alchemical process where, as the divine feminine, we withdraw our consent from distortion. And it's not the end of love. It's the beginning of coherence. And you might ask me, why then? Why does the love even turn into rage? Why does it even turn into sacred rage or sacred anger in the twin flame journey, especially in the monadic twin flame journey? So remember, all right, the moment love stops shielding the truth, there comes a point in your divine feminine journey where you realize, I've been loving him through my wounds. I've been waiting for him from a place of depletion. I've been bypassing my rage and calling it devotion. This is the exact point. This is when it actually erupts, that sacred fire of anger within you. Not because you want to destroy, but because you are finally done dismembering yourself in the name of unconditional love. This rage, it's not hatred. I want to be very, very, very clear. Sacred rage is not hatred. Actually, it's totally different. So guys, remember, it is not hatred. And I want you to let this immerse in you that this is not hatred. It is the soul fire of truth finally being unchained. That's why I want to emphasize this. This isn't hatred. This is truth arriving in an explosion of fire. Energetically, metaphorically, of course. And at a certain point in your twin flame path, especially as monadic twin flames, especially in monadic twin flame configuration, as the divine feminine, we cross a spiritual threshold that very few talk about, but most inevitably reach. This is when you no longer feel soft devotion, but you actually feel spiritual rage. Not because you hate your divine masculine, not because the love has disappeared, but because the illusion, let me be very clear here, the illusion has burned off. And what remains is the soul's revolt against incoherence. That's why this anger is not dysfunction. It's not bitterness. It's not failure. It is sacred intelligence. And your next question may be, why? Why the divine feminine rage? Why does divine feminine anger even exist in the first place? And why is it holy? Why is it so sacred? Remember, guys, the divine feminine's rage, it's not dysfunction. It is the soul intelligence rising through the emotional body. So let me emphasize on this emotional body. So when you first meet your divine masculine, you open from the heart. You see his soul, we see his soul, and that's when we know this is actually a twin flame connection. You remember who he is, and what do? We offer unconditional love even when our divine masculine is unable to receive it. And at first, this devotion, it feels like the truth. But over time, when his 3D self continues to detour karmically, like category 1 twin flames, delay accountability, like category 2 twin flames, the silent initiate, you got to accept your energy. You got to truly accept your energy, because what is actually happening is that your divine masculine is instead accepting your energy while avoiding commitment. So what is going on here is that he keeps on receiving all the love you send him, everything you do for him, but he avoids commitment. He starts who knows what, But from my own experience, this was exactly what's happening. as a divine feminine, as a monadic divine feminine, we have the tendency to be a little too much sometimes. And when I mean a little too much is the compassion, loving without boundaries, that in the name of unconditional love, doing so much, waiting forever, trying so hard. That's where I was coming at. And your divine masculine, my divine masculine, all of our divine masculines, they do accept our energy on some level, but while avoiding commitment. So over time, when his 3D self continues with this behavior, and then finally, when his 3D self continues silencing the sacred mirror you bring, this is when a psychic and spiritual contradiction starts to build within your system. Eventually, the contradiction ignites. Anger appears when the soul says, this is no longer love. This is self-erasure. So in the next part, we are going to look at divine feminine rage versus reactive anger. So let's get one thing very, very clear here. Reactive anger is what you feel when your ego doesn't get what it wants, while sacred rage is what you feel when your soul has been violated. And let me be very clear here. Violated over and over again by silence, gaslighting, or disempowered love. So reactive anger, one is noisy. Whereas sacred rage, this one is surgical. So this is not crazy girl energy. This is archetypical justice rising from your bones. So this is exactly what you would call divine feminine rage. Is a rite of passage, not a regression. So what I'm trying to say here is, you are feeling all this, and it's valid that you feel all this, because if you don't feel all this, you're not going to break out of the illusion. So this is the point where you can really distinguish, what is a karmic connection and what's a twin flame connection. Because a twin flame connection, it's meant to evolve you, to get you growing. Whereas reactive anger comes from the ego. So this stage forces you to create, not only create, but to draw very clear boundaries, not because you hate your divine masculine, not because he's stealing your energies, no, because you are coming out of the illusion and becoming a coherent flame. So that's why many are taught to see the divine feminine anger as a sign of emotional instability or spiritual immaturity. It's quite the contrary. This is actually very false. When you go deeper into your soul, you will realize this, that divine feminine rage is what rises when your soul is done pretending. This is the point when you stop spiritualizing abandonment, justifying misalignment, and performing unconditional love to protect his karmic fear. And this rage is not reactive, it is revelation. And it is the soul's immune response to dishonor. That's why, let's talk frequency. When the divine masculine continues to receive our energy, the divine feminine's energy, emotionally, psychically, energetically, I don't want to use the S word, spiritually, while refusing to meet you in the field of embodied truth, the energy loop becomes imbalanced and distorted. Your system begins to leak energy through longing. You start to feel drained in the telepathic field, and you merge in dreams. You start to merge in dreams, but disconnect in reality. This one-way energetic channel eventually collapses, and that collapse can really get you worked up. Not because you hate him, but because your field is reclaiming energetic symmetry. Remember, your anger is not emotional instability. It is the soul saying, close the loop, burn the imbalance, stop feeding him what he won't honor. So, this is the very interesting part. Our divine masculines don't feel our rage until we stop suppressing it. So all this performance, all this pretending, oh, I'm the unconditional divine feminine, I will be this, I'll be that, but you're not being genuine, you're not being in your authentic self. And this twin flame journey, especially being a monadic divine feminine, you have to remember authenticity is so important. If you suppress this pain, if you suppress this anger, and if you don't release it and you keep performing like the discourse I did last weekend, then you're never going to cross the stage to pre-union. So that is what I mean. Ironically, our divine masculine doesn't feel the consequence of his disconnection until you, as the divine feminine, stops managing his emotions. So your anger isn't meant to punish him. It's meant to shatter the lie you have been complicit in. But when you finally stop making excuses for his silence, his karmic detours, or his energetic excess without commitment, you reclaim your core integrity. And only then can you say, I love you, but I won't abandon myself to keep you comfortable. And why this anger hits after the longing phase? It doesn't come at the start. It comes after years of longing, hope, and internal contortion. That's because, as the divine feminine, we first loved our child self, the hoping, the fantasizing, forgiving too much. Then we loved our higher heart, praying, holding space, waiting for coherence. Then finally, we reach soul love, where we cannot lie to ourselves anymore. So this is very important, guys. And soul love demands truth, authenticity. So when his energy continues to seek access while refusing responsibility, your system rebels. Not because you stopped loving him, but because you started loving yourself more. Isn't that what the journey is about, after all? So now let's look at the psychological stages leading to this sacred reach. Many divine feminines don't just arrive in rage. We go through an internal unraveling. So let's look closely at what that means, all right? So number one, this is the phase where you are idealizing him. You see his higher self, his soul contract, his divine mission. You romanticize the connection and often ignore red flags. Number two, the overfunctioning phase. You compensate emotionally and spiritually. Channeling, waiting, clearing karma for both you and your divine masculine. Thirdly, the disillusionment phase. You compensate emotionally. So after the overfunctioning phase where you compensate emotionally, when the disillusionment phase comes in, you see the contrast between his potential and his actual behavior, and you begin questioning yourself. So this is the stage where you're like, what is all of this about? So this is actually a good phase, you're right in the middle. It's 1 and 2, the idealizing phase and the overfunctioning phase, where you tend to go into extreme. And then comes the purge phase, the pain of betrayal, often energetic, not literal, becomes too loud. You start pulling your energy back, not as a tactic, but as a psychic reflex. And then the anger phase, the rage phase comes in. Your boundaries ignite, You start speaking what you've been silencing. This is not immaturity, it's integrity emerging. And now let's look at when the rage burns off the fantasy. So this phase can be quite intense in the most sacred way. So let me be very careful here with the words, especially as rage can mean many things, but sacred rage, you would know if you are in a twin flame journey what I mean. So what actually happens is when the rage burns off the fantasy, it will burn off the pedestalization, the pedestal, the projection, the pattern of spiritual martyrdom. And what's left? A woman who no longer needs to be chosen because you're already choosing yourself. And this is the only version of you that can meet him in union. I speak by experience. This is how it is. And only in a monadic twin flame journey, this point actually comes before pre-union often. The woman who is already whole and done bleeding for half-built love. So I want to now bring you into looking deeper into sacred anger versus reactive anger and the difference. All right. So reactive anger is egoic, noisy, uncontained, whereas sacred rage is precise, ancient, and soul-born. Reactive anger seeks punishment. Sacred rage seeks correction and truth. Reactive anger feeds chaos, whereas sacred rage destroys distortion. Reactive anger comes from unmet desire, whereas sacred rage comes from truth, from the truth of being denied too long. So sacred anger is soul fire. It burns the lie, not the person. And this is not about attacking our divine masculine. It's about withdrawing all energetic permission for incoherence to remain in your field. So recognizing the difference is very, very important. All right? Because like I said, reactive anger is very ego-driven. Ego-driven, like I said, response to unmet desire, whereas sacred rage, soul-driven demand for energetic justice. It's reactive anger, often loud, blame-filled, whereas sacred rage is often still but deeply undeniable. And reactive anger escalates conflict. Sacred rage collapses false structure. Reactive anger speaks to punish. Sacred rage seeks to protect. Reactive anger feels chaotic. Sacred rage feels clarifying. That's why reactive anger says, you hurt me and I want you to feel it. Very 3D. Sacred rage says this. I want you to listen very clearly. All right. Sacred rage says, I refuse to be complicit in my own silencing anymore. So can you see the difference here? One is egoic. The other is soul preserving. So why the divine masculine needs your rage, anger, but doesn't know it? So here's what no one talks about. The divine masculine often continues in karmic patterns because nothing in his field truly reflects consequence. As long as the feminine keeps offering energetic access, psychic reassurance, astral merging, loving presence without truth, he never feels what he's losing. But when we start feeling angry, when we start being very angry, when we start raging, when we stop editing ourselves, when we collapse the access he once had to our emotional and etheric body, he now meets you not as the nice version. So this is the stage of Kali. You've got the different stages of the goddess, right? So this is the stage of Kali. But as the sovereign frequency that is soul signed up to be refined by. So that is what it means actually. Because if this doesn't happen, the sovereign frequency that is soul signed up for would not start to build up. So how to channel this sacred rage without collateral damage? So if you are here right now, I want you to know you're not crazy. You're not regressing. You're not becoming a low vibrational wounded feminine. You're actually becoming clean because you're authentic, But remember, your rage must be channeled, not weaponized. So here's how. Let it move through the body. These are some practical tips. You can scream into a towel, you can punch a pillow, or you can dance like Kali, literally. Number two, you can name the violation, like what your DM is doing. Is he ignoring you? Silent initiate, if he keep choosing someone else. Journal the exact moments where you feel betrayed by your own boundaries. Close the open channels. Revoke energetic access from the version of him that refuses to rise. Speak the unspoken. Say the thing you have been spiritualizing for too long, even if it's just to yourself. So, why the masculine only feels the shift when you stop suppressing it? So, what I mean by it is the divine masculine rarely feels the true consequence of his avoidance until you stop silencing your own knowing. As long as you excuse his behavior, energetically overfunction, keep the heart door open just in case. Oh, and we are all guilty of that, right? We are all guilty of that at some point. Pre-union stage. That's why being in union, I can say that there will come a time you need to close the door and not be in the just in case forever waiting for you phase. So this is when he continues to unconsciously receive excuse me, your energy without ever having to meet you in the field of truth. But the moment you feel your anger, your rage, and honor it, the dynamic collapses. This is not emotional warfare. Let me be very clear. This is not emotional warfare. This is karmic evacuation. This is why I consider rage as the death of spiritual martyrdom, which I've been talking about earlier in the video. This is the part of the journey where you stop bleeding for love, where you no longer mistake unconditional love for unconditional access, where you no longer feed the third energy field with your pain and call it devotion, and you keep nurturing the union at the cost of your own coherence. Remember, your rage is not betrayal of love, it's the purification of it. So I hope you're following me, all right, in this. So remember, in sacred anger, you remember what you forget, that you were never meant to be soft until the point of distortion, that you were never created to abandon yourself in the name of light, that your love was always meant to be grounded in standards and not longing. And you stop being the sweet one and you start becoming the calm one, the still one. The one who holds love without enabling coherence, the one who speaks truth even if it shakes the structure, the one who stops performing spiritual femininity and embodies sovereign clarity. And how to honor the rage without becoming it? Sacred anger is not meant to consume you. It's meant to correct your field and to walk through it with grace. So don't bypass it. Let it move. Let it roll. Let it shake. And like the tips I've given you, journal, speak the truth, revoke energetic access, especially from the version of him that is not showing up. Don't collapse your heart. Refine it. Keep it open to truth, not distortion. And you will start to notice something that you have never noticed before. This is when you will meet a version of yourself so whole, so clear, so sovereign, that you will either rise to match it or fade as a chapter that couldn't hold you. Because the truth is, the only version of you he can truly meet is the feminine who has not burned in this fire, is still bending, still fantasizing, still emotionally entangled. But the one who lets herself rage and then rise like the phoenix, That is the feminine who holds the field of real union because she's no longer available for partial love or breadcrumbs. She's no longer pedestalizing her divine masculine. She's no longer magnetized by potential or by a future. She's no longer holding space, she's holding standard. And that's exactly what the role of our divine masculine is, to awaken that part of ourselves where we truly become the divine, sacred divine feminine. And this is when transformation becomes possible, not before. That's why you got to see rage as a timeline collapser. Rage in its sacred form is timeline intelligence. It collapses the whole karmic detour loops, the fantasy-based projections, the spiritual performance patterns. It destroys the 3D scaffolding that was keeping the union stuck in potential instead of embodiment. In short, sacred anger is not an obstacle to union. It is a precondition. So no sacred union is built without the feminine first repossessing energy. And you know what happens after the rage? You know what changes in your field? Once this rage is felt and honored, something powerful happens. Your nervous system resets. Your energy field stops leaking. Your heart remains open. But your standards are non-negotiable. You no longer fear being too much. You know, many of my clients say that, divine masculines love to say that. You start to see clearly. And when your DM rises, it will be into truth, not fantasy. You become the divine feminine that you're meant to be. No chasing, no waiting, no pleading. You become unmistakably sovereign. And the sacred question you must ask, am I angry at him or angry at the part of me that kept handing over my coherence in exchange for hope? This question breaks the loop because the rage isn't really about him. It's about the way you abandon yourself in the name of love. And the fire is there to bring you home to yourself. And the magic question and the magic answer you're all waiting for. How does this lead to union? All right. I think I might need to do a part two. I don't want this video to go too long, but you know what? I'll try to put this in. All right. So sacred reach leads to union in the twin flame journey. Because here's the paradox no one tells you about. Union does not begin with more love. It begins with more truth, more authenticity. And sacred reach is the fire that clears the lies. So in most twin flame dynamics, it begins with unconscious merging. You love him through his wounds, you hold space while he detours, you remain open while he stays emotionally or karmically unavailable. This creates a false energetic template: devotion without direction, access without accountability, intimacy without embodiment. Sacred rage, sacred anger destroys that template. The Kali phase destroys the template. It breaks the energetic field of waiting, silent suffering, martyrdom, and overfunctioning. And only once that field collapses can true union begin. So rage rebuilds energetic symmetry. True twin flame union is not about constant connection. It's about balance, polarity, and coherence. And as the divine feminine, when the divine feminine is stuck in silent longing, the polarity is distorted. We become over emitting and he starts to overly withdraw. But when rage erupts, we pull our energy back. We end the overgiving, the love bombing. We collapse psychic cording. We withdraw permission from his lower self. This restores polarity. It forces the masculine's field to do one of the two things: rise to meet you in your new frequency, exit, or exit because it can no longer feed off the energetic loop. Either way, you remain coherent. And coherence is the only state that sustains union. So remember, the anger returns the feminine to herself, and that is the pre-union gate. Union does not happen because the masculine chooses you. Union happens because you choose yourself so fully that he must align or be vibrationally expelled. So rage is the moment of decision. No more waiting, no more bleeding, no more bypassing, because the decision doesn't shut the heart, it fortifies it. And only from this place of full self-reclamation can the divine feminine anchor the field that actually allows union to unfold. Because now you're no longer chasing, you're no longer seeking proof, you're no longer magnetized by potential, you're holding truth. And truth is what pulls him into evolution, not love alone. Another thing is sacred rage triggers the masculine soul memory. Once, as the feminine, we stop editing ourselves, hiding our pain, or keeping our fire quiet for him to feel comfortable, he starts to feel the void, but not as punishment, as a consequence. Our rage shatters the egoic illusion that we will always be there. Sends a frequency through the field that activates his higher self, forces him to reconcile the energetic cost of his avoidance. So many masculines awaken only after we, as the divine feminine, collapse the energetic contract that previously kept us accessible despite the incoherence. This is why fire is not closure, it is an invitation to truth. Remember, union requires two who have met themselves in fire. So no one talks about this. You cannot merge with someone in divine union unless you've separated from the version of yourself that betrayed yourself to keep your divine masculine. So sacred rage is the weapon that severs you from your unsovereign self. And at this moment, you emerge from the fire. You are still, you are powerful, and you're no longer needy. And you're clear. And you're not waiting any long. This is the divine feminine, the empowered divine feminine. The empowered divine masculine can finally meet because he can no longer hide behind your softness. Now it's him who must rise in truth or fade away in karmic collapse. So remember, rage isn't the end. It's the initiation before union. So yes, when the love turns into rage, it may feel like the connection is over, but really it's the death of distortion. The end of illusion, the collapse of the fantasy, and what's left, a sacred stillness, we becoming a coherent feminine, and the energetic space where a masculine, in truth, not potential, can finally return. So this is the threshold to the real union you are always meant to hold. So that is the reason why the holy fire that makes union possible, in closing, the sacred rage is actually what makes union possible, because if not, there's no way for you to break out of the illusion. So if you're feeling rage, grief, disgust, or that ache of being done, you're not falling apart. You're actually becoming whole. You're exiting martyrdom. You're purifying the third energy. You're severing the lie. And this is not regression. This is soul repair. And let the fire burn. And if it's meant to return, it will be not to the version of you that needed to be chosen, but to the version who has already chosen herself irrevocably and in fire. So in closing, I just want to say, you're allowed to be angry. You're allowed to be done. You're allowed to raise your voice in truth, in pain, in love. This is not the end of your union path. This is the start of true embodiment. And if you are here, furious, fed up, shaking from the contradiction of what you know he is and what he's choosing to be, you're not breaking, you're coming home. And this is the part of the journey where your love matures, where your soul gets loud, where your self-abandonment dies. And this is the fire before coherence. So let it burn. And if this spoke to you, if this discourse resonates with you, drop a drop a like, subscribe, drop a sacred fire symbol to say I felt this in the comments below, and let this space where sacred anger becomes alchemy and love becomes real. So guys, if you want to hear more, learn more, hear more discourses, you can subscribe my channel for more advanced twin flame teachings, and I will see you all again in the next one. And if you guys want a private session, one-on-one session with me, if you want healings, you can check out my website. All right, then, take care, and I'll come back again with another video. Thank you all for watching, and let me know in the comments what you feel. All right, take care and have a lovely day.